Hey Andy, nice of you to join me again. We're on Epic Encounters 5. We're halfway to 10. Did you ever think we'd get this far with no fans?
I was hoping we would never get this far. Not for reasons of not being able to run shows. I was hoping that by now we'd be back in front of fans. I was hoping that by now those empty arena shows would be a distant memory, and people would be saying, "Didn't they do well to keep going the best they could during these horrible times?" But yeah, here we are with Epic Encounters 5. We realistically looking. Obviously, we had some great hope yesterday in terms of vaccines becoming potentially available, but we're not kidding ourselves. It's going to be a long while before, they reach the mass of the population. And it's not until those times, I don't feel that, we can realistically look at being in front of crowds or any significant crowds. Because obviously, as I think I've alluded to before, there was a small window of opportunity to do stuff in front of small socially distanced crowds, but there were pros and cons of doing it, but the cons really outweighed the pros. So yeah, here we are. We're just trying to make the best of a situation, and I'm happy with what we're doing. I'm happy that we're still doing this. I'm happy that it's still going. I'm happy with how the shows have come across, and I feel that we've learned a lot of lessons from these shows. And moving forwards, I think they're only going to improve, only going to get better. But I feel that in terms of the level of in-ring competition, and in terms of character development, in terms of progressing things forward in Rev Pro, it's great that things just haven't stagnated and stood still, so to speak. We've kind of moved on, like the rest of the world has had to just try and move on. It's obviously not the same as it was, and it's not the ideal set of circumstances, but we're making the best out of that situation. So yeah, I didn't think we'd still be here, but I'm glad that we're still running shows. I'm glad that I still get to watch and call professional wrestling matches, and I'm excited about the opportunities that these shows have presented for many people, and the opportunity that's given for ourselves to look at our product and the way we present things and how we can tighten things up and improve things moving forward. So it's been a very interesting journey with these Epic Encounters shows.
Well, talking about the presentation, the last show was on Twitch, and Epic Encounters 5 will be on Twitch again. So how you found the Rev Pro Twitch experience?
Well, I'm not going to lie, I haven't got a clue. I feel that we had some issues with the old with the stream. I think for some people it was a bit laggy. So I hope that will be corrected this Sunday for the show. We're actually making the bold move of also streaming it. This is a first. This is the first time I think I've told anyone. But we're also going to stream this week's show on Facebook, and we're going to stream it on YouTube. We had lots of reasons for wanting to stream on Twitch, and really make it, again, the bottom line is what we wanted to do was make the Epic Encounters shows as accessible as possible for as many people as possible. The whole point of the Epic Encounters really was for our on-demand service, rpwondemand.com, which I really hope people will still continue to support, and know that obviously once a show's stream, that immediately archived at rpwondemand.com. So they won't be archived anywhere else. It'll just be at RPW On Demand. So if you want to watch matches back, if you want to skip through matches, then you can do that on rpwondemand.com. But the reality of the situation is, when we were creating these shows, we really wanted to try and replicate as close as possible for the fan experience of not knowing what's going to happen in the matches, of being able to talk about the matches in real time, of being able to talk about the matches post-show straight away, and everyone watching it at the same time without it being spoiled, or the ones that wanted to watch it at the same time, at least having that option to watch it at the same time. And really, for me, it was a case of did having a paywall in front of what we were doing, did that slow the growth of people talking about the product and the organic growth? And yeah, we made money off of the pay-per-view, and it would be nice to still have that money, especially in the current climate and circumstances. But I feel like long term, I feel like the best thing for Rev Pro is to be as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. All we're trying to do is entertain people in this pandemic. We're back in lockdown again, and we want to keep everyone entertained. We want to keep everyone having fun, and we want to provide, just for a couple of hours every 3 weeks to provide a bit of escapism and something, and then following each show, something for people to look forward to with the next one. And, you know, the money's always been secondary to me, which is why I'm still in the professional wrestling business. But like, I feel that it's really, especially now, I think a lot of people didn't even know what a Twitch was. I didn't know what a Twitch was. And I'm learning, but I feel like you know, making it as accessible, like the idea behind just doing it behind Twitch was that you get to become an affiliate if that's your own, and then hopefully later a partner if that's your only means of streaming it, so you're not multi-streaming it across different platforms. But to me, I think the most important thing is the reason why we went on Twitch in the first place is we were just looking for a free platform. And we want to grow our Twitch, we do. And like, if we can, it's something for when we get back going properly, hopefully Twitch will become a big part of our strategy, our media strategy moving forward. I mean, WWE are making a big deal about it, so it must be a big thing, right, in wrestling?
Yeah.
So to me, like, it was an opportunity to try and grow that Twitch platform, try and get some followers, subscribers, etc. And we still encourage people who, with Twitch is their preferred platform, we want them to watch it via Twitch. And at the same time, we need to grow our YouTube channel that we lost and we started from scratch. And, you know, and the Facebook, we want to create as much engagement, as much cross-platform engagement as possible, and not be really ignorant enough to think that people, that every single Facebook user also uses Twitch and every single YouTube user also uses Twitch, etc. So we know there's some people who just use a preferred form of social media. So whatever form they use, we want to be able to deliver epic encounters, hopefully get more people talking about the shows. The more people talk about the shows, more eyeballs it puts on the product, and then the more we can continue our organic growth. So think about the free platform that we give in. That's our big expensive import we're bringing in. You come because it's free, and then you stay because of the excellent professional wrestling action. So that's the plan anyway. There's a method behind the madness. Hopefully it works, and hopefully people are just appreciating what we do. And if you are appreciating it, then please just support it, and support it by, be it word of mouth, be it by purchasing some merchandise from shoprevpro.com or subscribing on demand, rpwondemand.com. Whatever way you wish to support, it's greatly appreciated. And again, this is very much for us a case of, as it's always been, one fan at a time, and trying to continue to build, and like I say, trying to make the best out of this bad situation we found ourselves in.
Well, let's get into this excellent card that we have for Epic Encounters 5. And we'll start with Mad Kurt versus Robbie X. Well, Mad Kurt, he's coming off a massive win against Dan Maloney. And if Mad Kurt ever needed any kind of confidence boost, this would definitely be what would give him one. But Robbie X, he's a very innovative wrestler. And do you think he's unlikely to let Kurt get the better of him in the way that we saw Dan do?
Well, first of all, Mad Kurt is insufferable. It's only worse, and I predict it's only going to get worse.
How did he celebrate his win against Dan?
I've got no idea, because I was nothing to do with it, and I stayed as far away from him as possible. It's when the social distancing became just a thing of beauty, really, because I definitely socially distanced myself from Mad Kurt in as far away as possible. 2 meters is not enough for that kid. But yeah, he's going to do his confidence a world of good, absolutely. And like you say, he was never short on confidence to begin with. Is he going to breed overconfidence? I don't know. It could be ironic in a sense, because Dan Maloney, you could say, went into that contest with Mad Kurt with a sense of overconfidence, and we'll get into Dan Maloney later, his psyche, what he's looking at and thinking about right now. But for Robbie X, you've got to think he's seen the match with Dan Maloney, and you've got to think that it's a warning sign for Robbie X of what can happen if you take your eye off the game. And if you look at Mad Kurt, you look at his clash he had with Eddie Kingston in February of this year, and you look at the beating he took, you look at the way he kept coming back, hanging in the contest, and you saw he had maybe 2 or 3 clear-cut opportunities to win the match against Eddie Kingston, but instead he decided to play around, to dab, to try and increase his social media reach. Maybe I should get him in on board as a social media manager, because that seems to be his main goal in life, upsetting people and increasing his social media reach. But yeah, that was his downfall against Eddie Kingston, and I thought he was going on a similar path against Gideon Gray, that he managed to weather that storm and come out victorious. I thought he was going on a similar path against Dan Maloney, but again, somehow, some way, he was able to win the match. But Dan Maloney took his eye off the game, and Robbie X would have seen that. He'll know how dangerous Mad Kurt is, and you'd think for someone of Robbie X's experience and ability, you'd think that he's not falling for any of those tricks that Mad Kurt has up his sleeve. And in terms of taking the contest lightly, I don't think Robbie X has taken a contest lightly in his life. So it's going to be, as I say, every single Mad Kurt match, it's going to be a styles clash. It's going to be a stylistically interesting encounter. So we're going to see how, I don't even know how you would describe or define Mad Kurt's style of professional wrestling. It perhaps needs a genre of its own, but we know he's a fine technician on his day, and we know he can take a beating. And at the end of the day, that's got to be his key to victory, just his toughness, his grit, his determination, and that, I guess, that pure wrestling ability. But Robbie X has been there, done that. He's got the t-shirt, including a new t-shirt coming out on Shop Rev Pro this weekend, actually. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, to say the least.
And we've got 4 of the hottest, youngest stars next coming up. Michael Oku and Connor Mills taking on JJ Gale and Callum Newman. Michael Oku and Connor, their friendship seems pretty strong at the minute. They definitely have each other's backs. And then we've got JJ and Callum, who have both really impressed over the past 4 shows. But how well do you think these 2 guys will work together as a tag team?
Well, the tag team was actually the suggestion of Will Ospreay to put together. Obviously, we know that he's mentored Callum Newman. He competed against JJ Gale last time out at Epic Encounters 4. And he suggested that they would mesh well together as a team. And I have to say, I agree with that assessment, because when you talk about the future of professional wrestling, you really have to look at JJ Gale and Callum Newman. And now, personally, I feel that they've gone different routes about their entrance into Rev Pro. I feel like, to me, JJ Gale was perhaps maybe a step ahead of Callum in terms of development as a professional. And that's really, to me, it's due to the reps you put in. He's had more matches than Callum. He's been more active than Callum. And look at the murderer's row that he's faced in Rev Pro since we've been in this global pandemic. We're talking Robbie X, Mark Haskins, Will Ospreay. You don't get much better than that. And iron sharpens iron. And JJ Gale's been competing against the top level of competition for a very long time now. I think it's only a matter of time before he starts to pick up those wins. And really, I feel for a lot of young wrestlers, and again, I don't want to sell tag team wrestling short by any stretch of the imagination, because I believe that there's nothing more exciting than a tag team match when done well with real tag teams. And I feel that tag team wrestling is almost a lost art, and it's something, and I'm very aware that our tag division is kind of up in the air at the moment with the status of the champions, Rampage Brown and Great O'Khan. And that's obviously something we're going to be addressing in the coming weeks. But for me, I think that tag team wrestling can be so special. So I don't want to sound like I'm putting it down at all when I say this, but I feel for a lot of young wrestlers, a tag team is a good route to go. And the reason I say this is because it allows you more time to think, because when you're on the outside of the ring, you can be analysing the match, you can be working out what's going on, you can be thinking about what you're going to do next. It gives you a chance to breathe. You're not going to be, it can still happen, don't get me wrong, but there's less chances for you to be overwhelmed by the occasion. There's less chances for you to experience that big adrenaline dump that we've heard people talk about before, when they get themselves hyped up for a match. They get so hyped up, they get in their ring, and then their adrenaline dumps, and they find it hard to get going. And I feel like, a tag team for these 2 at this stage in their career, and again, continuing to fight against the very best, which is key. I think that is a very interesting and intriguing route for those 2 in a very interesting direction. And obviously they're going up against Connor Mills, Michael Oku. And as you said, if you were to put doubts over any friendships ahead of the start of our empty arena shows, it would be Connor Mills and Michael Oku. I'm not going to lie, when Michael Oku said to me, we'd kind of like to start teaming together again, me and Mills, I kind of gave it one of them, because one of the lasting memories of the final few shows of Rev Pro, not that we knew it was, but one of the lasting memories of those final shows in front of audiences was Connor Mills kicking Michael Oku in the back of the head, and Michael Oku chasing him off at the London cockpit. And it seemed that those two were on a collision course for each other, but I guess lockdown changes people's perspectives. It changes, it makes people realise there's more important things in the world, and it really brought Connor Mills and Michael Oku together as friends. They're not going to fight about professional wrestling. Certainly got bigger fish to fry in the real world. But one thing that I found very interesting was Connor Mills said he's not going to let other people's successes get to him. So you think, was it in fact a sense of jealousy of Michael Oku? Connor Mills has very much been, I guess, almost a mentor to Michael Oku when he came. Like, they're both relatively young and inexperienced in terms of professional wrestling, but Connor Mills was around a long time before Michael Oku was around. And when Michael Oku started training, it was Connor Mills that took Michael Oku under his wing. And I guess it was seeing Michael Oku branch out first and quickest and gain the bigger mainstream publicity and press. I guess that's what was playing in the back of Connor Mills' head. But I guess given the scenario that they're working towards the same goal, even though Michael Oku's still the British Cruiserweight champion, they're working towards the goal of that tag team championship. They're on the same page, and the fact remains they trained together. We can say they grew up together in terms of their adult lives together. It's not a childhood friendship story that we hear. It's but their wrestling lives, they've grown up with each other. They've become young men. They've gone from boys to young men alongside each other, and they know each other's game inside out. And I think that's the makings of a good tag team. And they're both phenomenal singles competitors. And I think that if they can stay on the same page, then they can be a phenomenal tag team. And I think this is a really interesting step for them here in Rev Pro, their first outing as a tag team in Rev Pro. We know they've competed across the United Kingdom as a team. And it's a real opportunity for them to prove their naysayers wrong, to show they are definitely on the same page, and to start looking towards some glory as a unit, to share in that celebration rather than it just being a personal thing for either one of them.
Well, throughout Epic Encounters, we've seen quite the epic rivalry develop between Kenneth Halfpenny and Brendan White. Now they're at 2 wins apiece, and we're going into 2 out of 3 falls match. And with everything these two have been through and how intense the rivalry between them is, you've got to think that first fall in the match is going to be the most important, not just to get that win advantage, but psychologically as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because because obviously if it wasn't 2 out of 3 falls, then it definitely would be the most important fall, because it wins. But I mean, when people have got a fallback, they can wrestle the contest a little bit differently. Perhaps I always find often you find 2 out of 3 fall matches have a faster start, because people can afford to throw caution to the wind earlier on in a contest. So it's going to be interesting to see the way the two compete in this match. We know Brendan White is carrying an arm injury into the match, which is really through a series of, they have been physical battles between the two. They're not the prettiest matches in the world, but I don't think anyone ever expects them to be the prettiest matches. They're just two physical competitors, and that's it. The key word there's competitors. And it's a rivalry which is born through the spirit of competition. And yes, it's got a little bit nasty along the way, but really for me, I kind of look at both those guys with a smile on my face, because I see them taking these opportunities and growing as professional wrestlers. And like I say, not the prettiest matches, but how else are these guys going to get better? How else are these going to grow as professional wrestlers? They're going to grow by putting themselves in these high pressure, high stakes environments. And I don't think, one thing that I don't think can be underestimated is how hard it is for wrestlers to wrestle without a crowd. And especially when you're young into your careers in professional wrestling, because you hear it all the time. Wrestler A is feeding off the energy of this capacity crowd. And it's true. I mean, you know, if you must have experienced yourself. Have you ever been a part of a crowd? When the
Yeah.
crowd's cheering around you, that energy is infectious, and it makes you feel you can take on the world and accomplish anything. And that's one of the things that I miss the most about wrestling shows, because I miss being pumped up at the end of a show. Like, yeah, come on, like, let's go. Like, I'd go into a show like just drained, you know, be it emotionally, physically, however drained, going into a wrestling show, and I'd walk away and my adrenaline would be pumping. I'd be like, you know, I'd go into a show thinking, I never want to do this ever again. And then, like, by the end of the show, I'm like, let's book the next 10 now, right? That's if you could bottle that feeling and hold on to it, that'd be something, you know. But for these guys, they're having to bring themselves up with no crowd at all. And, you know, I always, again, through the years, you know, we've had guys progress in the contenders division, we've had guys come through our training school, and what you say is it's always a lot easier when you're in front of the crowd. Even though the thought of a crowd is a daunting prospect, once you get that first round of applause, that bit of validation from the crowd, the nerves in the stomach begin to settle a little bit, and then that nervous energy starts to come to the forefront, and then before you know it, you're working all cylinders, you know, and it's a completely different experience for you. But for these guys, they've got no crowds. They've got no one to egg them on. They've got no one to give them that adrenaline, and they're coming into it cold. And I think that as very young professional wrestlers, I think that, you know, some of the more experienced wrestlers, I think they can handle a lot better situations like this. But I think when you're young and inexperienced, it becomes a lot harder. And, you know, and again, we can look at, for example, a JJ Gale, last time out 3 weeks ago against Will Ospreay. You know, he was working against someone a lot more experienced than him, so he was forced to find that adrenaline from somewhere, you know. These guys are working against each other, similar experience levels. So I commend both men. And whatever the result, I think there's a bright future for both Kenneth Halfpenny and Brendan White. And I think that you can look at either men and you can see the strengths in their games. And you can see, like, you know, if they tidy up some of the little holes in their games, they're going to be real big deals in sport of professional wrestling moving forward. So I'm personally excited to be working with both moving forwards. And I think that there's no shame in losing this one. Whatever Kenneth Halfpenny may tell you, I don't think there's any shame in losing this one, whoever loses. You know, I think that both men have very clear paths forwards in their respective careers in Revolution Pro Wrestling and beyond. So it's going to be, I'm going to enjoy it. I hope that they deliver what they're capable of. I hope that they're both happy with their showing, because there's nothing worse than, you know, thinking if only. I've got a feeling that, you know, if we're following the trends of the previous matches, they're going to leave it all in the ring, 2 out of 3 falls.
And we have another huge tag team match as Zoe Lucas and Bobby Tyler taking on Jamie Hayter and B. Priestley. Now, we talked about with the men, we were wondering if JJ and Callum, how they gel. There's no problems like that here. This is like the 2 teams of best friends taking on each other. And, you know, B and Jamie, we haven't been used to them in Rev Pro, but we're getting used to them over the past 4 shows. And Zoe seems like Zoe never wants anyone else kind of in her territory. So you've got to feel like Jamie and B have to win this one to really stake their claim in Rev Pro.
Yeah, but I mean, they've spoken real fighting talk. They've kind of declared themselves as being not just the best female tag team unit in Rev Pro, but the best female tag team unit in the world. They pride themselves, Awado Tai, B. Priestley and Jamie Hayter, they pride themselves on being a real tag team. You know, wherever their paths cross, they live together. You know, they train together in the gym, they train together at wrestling schools. You know, they talk strategy together, they watch matches together, they socialize together. They have a real definition of a tag team. But then you look at Zoe Lucas and Robbie Tyler, exact same thing, you know, besties. I've got to feel that their friendship isn't as orientated around the spirit of competition and the sport of professional wrestling as Jamie Hayter and B. Priestley, but sometimes that's not a bad thing. Sometimes, you know, if you're too focused on one thing, it can lead to your downfall. And let's just hope that Zoe Lucas has her mind on the game, because of course she's had a lot of problems with Aaliyah James over the last, well, since before lockdown. you know, and I feel like this really, for me, should have been a time where Zoe Lucas was concentrating on trying to get back her women's championship, but instead she's becoming embroiled in this rivalry with Aaliyah James. And I think a lot of it started off in her own head. And I think that that's a, you know, a real interesting scenario, an interesting subplot to this contest. But really it is, like you say, two well-oiled machines, two real tag teams duking it out, and it could be an excellent contest. And I think it's just an example of how exciting the women's division is in Revolution Pro Wrestling. Of course, B. Priestley last time out coming up short against Giselle Shaw. She's going to want to rebound. Jamie Hayter going to want to rebound from that defeat at the hands of Bobby Tyler, the shock defeat at the hands of Bobby Tyler. Don't think for one second she hasn't forgotten about Zoe Lucas's involvement in that contest and that golf club to the back of the head. So it's going to be, you know, whenever Oedo Tyre in the ring, whenever Jamie Hayter and B. Priestley in the ring, it's going to be physical. So I can guarantee that much. But yeah, the fact that these two teams, as teams, know each other so well, and as opponents know each other so well, I think it's definitely going to be an intriguing and interesting clash in the landscape of the women's division here at Rev Pro, which just seems to be getting more and more exciting by the day.
Well, we spoke about Mad Kurt earlier. It's time to talk about Dan Maloney. We saw at Epic Encounters 4, Shah Samuels make a shock return. He picked really the best moment to go after Dan Maloney, who must have been at his lowest point, having just lost to Mad Kurt. So firstly, is Dan, do you think, psychologically ready for this match?
I don't know. I know it depends how people respond in different ways. I know Dan's pissed off. I know he's angry. I know he's embarrassed. But he's in the locker room is a man who keeps himself to himself. So it's not like we had a heart-to-heart after that defeat. If anything, I wanted to stay as far away from him as possible because he was that angry. So we'll see. It's like I say, it depends how he responds to that. Because that's the one thing I will say is we've never seen, because Dan Maloney is so successful in Rev Pro as a singles competitor, we've not seen him be defeated until 3 weeks ago. So we've never seen how he responds to defeat. You know, we've seen how he responds riding a wave of momentum. We've seen how he responds to high pressure situations. We've seen how he responds against people who are bigger than him, stronger than him, you know, but we've not seen how he responds coming back off of a big defeat. Now, you said Shah Samuels, I forget the way you termed it, but in terms of, you know, picking his moment to get Dan Maloney, I think Shah will tell you that he's gone, you know, he's proven his bravado as a man here in Rev Pro by coming after the biggest fish in the pond, so to speak, in terms of Dan Maloney. But like you say, he picked the moment where Dan Maloney was at his lowest. So what does that say about Shah Samuels? What does that say about Gideon Gray? Would we have seen Shah Samuels at all had Mad Kurt not been victorious in that match? You know,
And you've also got to, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, like, as low as Dan might be right now, yeah, I've got some questions about Shah Samuels because we haven't seen him in quite a while, and he's been dealing with injuries. So you've got to wonder, is he prepared to get back in the ring? How is he psychologically? Will there be ring rust?
Well, that's a great question, because for Shah Samuels, lockdown began a lot sooner than it did for everyone else, because he was injured. His last in-ring competition was in January. It was at New Year's Revolution at the start of this year. You know, the first week of maybe January 11th, maybe 10th, 11th, something like that. But so he's not competed since then. And that was a 6-man tag match. His previous encounters, you know, it was a long time before that. So it was before the December York Hall show that Shah suffered his initial injury. So it's been a long time out for Shah Samuels. I'm going to say at least 10 months out for Shah Samuels. And I feel in his head he's going to be ready. And I think that perhaps one of the reasons why he did pick Dan Maloney may have been because for him to know, for him to be 100% sure, he has to take the shots from the biggest, the strongest, the baddest in the pro. And I don't think there's any denying that Dan Maloney is each and every single one of those things. So I think that perhaps this will be the test that Shah Samuels needs to see if he's still got what it takes to get the job done in Revolution Pro Wrestling, to see if he's still got what it takes to get the job done in general, to see if he's still got what it takes to be a professional wrestler. And I think that this contest this Sunday is going to tell a lot about Shah Samuels, about his standing in Rev Pro moving forward. Of course, we know his history, we know his credentials, a former longest reigning undisputed British heavyweight champion of all time. He's by no means washed up. I don't want to be suggesting that for a second. Shah Samuels is very much the real deal. But there's question marks. And this Sunday, he's going to look to answer those questions emphatically. So there's not just questions over Dan Maloney's head, but also over Shah Samuels' head. So really, for both men, this is a must-win contest, because for either man, you put yourself in either man's shoes. If you lose, where do you go from here?
Yeah.
And I know Dan Maloney's put up an impressive run of victories, but if he were to lose again to Shah Samuels after going all this time without defeat, how does he respond? How does he move forward? You know, it's a real interesting question. It's a very real question that's going to be answered this Sunday. And for Shah Samuels, after taking all this time off, after picking the fight, you know, it was different. It's not a case of, we've said, let's put together Shah Samuels versus Dan Maloney. This is a fight that Shah Samuels picked. After picking this fight, how's Shah Samuels going to be able to show his face in Rev Pro again if he were to lose to Dan Maloney? You know, so for both men, this is a must-win contest. And, you know, I'm excited. I love to see heavyweight wrestling. It's a lost art, really, heavyweight wrestling. But, you know, these two guys, and I think whoever wins this contest, forget about the loss to Madcap. If Dan Maloney's victorious here, I think he puts himself in the running for a shot at Will Ospreay's undisputed British Heavyweight Championship, or Ricky Knight Jr.'s undisputed British Heavyweight Championship.
Well, yeah, that is our big main event. Will Ospreay versus Ricky Knight Jr. And RKJ he's impressed us so much over these shows, and this is his big moment. And he's going into it having scored a pinfall victory over Ospreay in a tag match, and that's got to be really doing something for him, his confidence. Like, he talks a big game, but he's got that to back it up. But then you've also got to wonder, now, does Ospreay now knows Ricky Knight Jr., so is Ospreay going into this even more determined and also really knowing what to expect?
Yeah, that's again another great point and an interesting set of circumstances which have been put in front of us. And yeah, if this was the first contest between RKJ and Will Ospreay, and say we knew now what we didn't know then, but Will Ospreay and Ricky Knight Jr. still had the same psyche they had going into that tag team clash at Epic Encounters 1, then I would say the money would 100% firmly be on Ricky Knight Jr. Because I believe, and I've been saying it since Ricky Knight Jr. debuted here in Rev Pro, I saw it the second I saw him walk around a ring and lock up with someone in person. I believe Ricky Knight Jr. is the future of professional wrestling. I believe Ricky Knight Jr. is the real deal. And I don't believe he's just a future. I believe Ricky Knight Jr. is the now. And I look at the final contest in Rev Pro in front of the crowd was Ricky Knight Jr. defeating Jay Lethal in an all-out war in St. Neots. And for me, that contest, that was a starting block for RKJ. That was you know, he's going to use this as a jumping block, and who knows what his, I guess it would have been that Cruiserweight Championship unification match with Michael Oku would be the, you know, the epic encounter contest that we would have seen at York Hall. But I genuinely believe that, you know, for him, sky's the limit. And it's not just these empty arena shows. It's not come out of nowhere. It's not been like, oh, you know, it's a new era for Rev Pro, and we're, you know, working with new talents and whatever have you. You know, it's a case of Ricky Knight Jr. since, when was it, October of last year, has since he came into Rev Pro, he's stolen the show, and he's shown exactly, pardon me, what he's capable of. And for me, Will Ospreay was in Japan that whole time. Will Ospreay never saw any of Ricky Knight Jr.'s stuff because Will Ospreay was busy doing his own thing. He was busy on his quest, his pursuit of the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship. He wasn't noticing the young pretenders coming up behind him. You know, for Will, again, and many driven people will tell you this, they have focus, they have a goal, they have tunnel vision. For Will, his sole focus, his sole purpose, his sole goal was winning that undisputed British heavyweight championship. And, you know, he wasn't looking around him. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that became perfectly clear after that huge tag match where Ricky Knight Jr. pinned him for 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. So RKJ knows he can walk into that confident. He can walk into this match with a confidence of knowing he can beat Will Ospreay. He can walk into it with a confidence of knowing he's just as good as Will Ospreay. He's just as quick. He can take. We've seen some devastating strikes from Will Ospreay over the last few weeks. An area of his game that he's improved as he's added size, he's added power behind those shots, and we've seen that over the past few epic encounters. But I think Ricky Knight Jr. will feel confident in the fact that he's taken some of Will Ospreay's best blows and still come back standing. And he's made it very clear he believes he's a real professional wrestler. He believes, this is being Ricky Knight Jr., he believes that having grown up around professional wrestling, he believes Will Ospreay was playing a professional wrestler, playing a part, whereas he believes for him it was reality. You know,
Yeah, it must kind of, for Will, he probably feels like he has an experience advantage with everything Will Ospreay's done. And we've heard so much about Will Ospreay, how he grew up in his training, that he was this young prodigy doing all these amazing things. But then you look at someone like Ricky Knight Jr. that's basically saying, you know, I don't care about that, what you did. I'm someone that was born into this, and I didn't need to be pretending, as he said, to be a wrestler. Like Ricky Knight Jr., he's almost been a wrestler from day one, hasn't he? You know, being from that family.
yeah, he learned how to lock up before he could walk. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
the story. You know, and he's he's from a family of champions. He's been around world champions his whole entire life. These high pressure situations, again, it's a high pressure situation for him. And then he goes into a contest. What I think is the craziest thing about Ricky Knight Jr. is he goes into this contest saying, I know you're a better professional wrestler than me.
Yeah.
But it's not just about that. If this turns into a dogfight, he's got to favour Ricky Knight Jr. You know, and I think that he knows that, and I think Will Ospreay's finding out that, and I think that we saw Will Ospreay strutting around after his victory over Gale. I think that that's almost lit a further fire beneath Ricky Knight Jr. Because he feels that Will Ospreay's not taking this contest seriously, not respecting him. But I feel that he's going to come out this Sunday looking to earn Will Ospreay's respect. And what I will say is perhaps there's a bit of a poker face from Will Ospreay, because I think Will Ospreay knows his heavyweight championship is under very real threat. And imagine that as well. You know, like Ricky Knight Jr. You know, he's not a guy who's known around the wrestling world, but after this Sunday, he could be known by everyone. And I believe he should be known by everyone. I believe it's a travesty he's not known by everyone, because I've never, in all my years, I've never seen someone at his young age be as talented as he is, and have the attitude, the positive attitude that he has. It's a future of professional wrestling. And it just really, it's not a question of if, but when Ricky Knight Jr. becomes the undisputed British heavyweight champion. That's how strongly I believe in this young man. And the question is, will that time be this Sunday, or is it going to be a step too far, a little bit too early on in the career of RKJ? I think that it's impossible to call, but this is a type of wrestling match that I love. This is a type of wrestling match that should be headlining a sold-out York Hall.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing it in front of no one, but the entire world is able to watch for free via all these different platforms, and I invite everyone to do so, because I believe RKJ and Will Ospreay is going to be a spectacle. It's going to be a demonstration of what professional wrestling is all about, the professional wrestling that we know and love. The reason why we fell in love with this, this great sport, this great art form. We're going to see it all on display this Sunday in that main event, between two of the very best. And that's what I believe in: competitive matches between the best. No one hiding from challenges. This is it. This is, it's going to shape the future of Rev Pro. This whole Sunday is going to, I think, shape the future of Rev Pro. And it's just, I'm excited to see where we go from here. And I invite and encourage everyone to check it out. to talk about it, to let people know about it, because I think that in years to come, we're going to look back on these days and we're going to look back on these shows, and we're going to be so happy that we were able to keep things going the way that we have been able to do. So, it's nearly killed me, but presenting these shows, but we're there, and it does almost feel like that this Sunday's show is it would be very appropriate if after this Sunday show we were able to return to audiences, because it feels like Sunday show is really peaking the last several epic encounters with that huge championship match. But with every end there's a new beginning, and I feel that this Sunday could also be a new beginning. But will it be a new beginning of a championship reign for RKJ, or will it be the start of another chapter in his journey as he looks to get on a path of redemption? So we'll find out.
Yeah, well, it's really, really great card. Again, I'm so excited for Sunday, and thanks so much for talking to me again, Andy.
No problem, absolute pleasure. So thanks very much everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoy the show on Sunday. And if you've just watched us talk about it and then you've decided not to watch the show, then I've got to start asking you some questions. You should probably start asking yourself some questions. But anyway, enough of that. But thank you very much.